Hello readers. Yesterday we talked about the plot of a story and how to retell or summarize what the plot was. Today we're going to talk about character traits and what those look like. So here I have my anchor chart already started. Make sure you grab a piece of paper, your journal, your reader's journal, your writing journal, whatever you have, whatever you normally use to follow along. As we talk about character traits and what they look like throughout a story, we're going to fill out an anchor chart. We're going to talk about emotions that a character may have and traits that they have. And then we're going to compare the two. We're going to look at how they're different, how they're similar, and specifically we're going to be able to list some character traits and character emotions as we read. So first you're going to start by writing character emotions versus character traits. Make sure to write as I'm talking, and then we're going to be able to put it into practice in a story. So emotions, we're going to look at emotions first. Emotions describe how a character feels at a certain time. When we look at emotions that a character is showing or feeling, there is one important question that we need to ask. We need to ask, how does the character feel right now? So at that moment in the book, how are they feeling? Are they feeling happy, scared, surprised, angry, embarrassed, jealous, or excited? There's also some other emotions that you could use, but these are just a couple examples that I've written. Next, I'm going to look at what my traits are. So traits, they're going to describe the character's personality, okay? And the one question I need to consider is, how does the character usually behave? This has to do with the behavior, not how they're feeling. Some examples of those are kind, confident, bossy, selfish, determined, shy, cautious. Are they mean, hardworking, outgoing, energetic, friendly, brave, or compassionate? Again, these are just a couple examples. It's not the only list, right? So there are other options that we could pick from. Go ahead and pause the video here if you need to finish writing any of these traits, emotions, what they are, the definitions. Pause the video and finish writing. So what we're going to do today, we're going to read the story Chrysanthemum. We're going to examine and analyze the emotions and traits that we observe as we read. But before I start reading, I want you to think about, what do you think the story is going to be about? Why do you think that's what your story is going to be about? And just what are you thinking in general? What kind of emotions and traits are we going to see? Let's go ahead and get started. If you can't hear the audio, make sure you follow along with the captions that are popping up.
Chrysanthemum by Kevin Henkes. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. "She's perfect," said her mother. "Absolutely," said her father. And she was. She was absolutely perfect. "Her name must be everything she is," said her mother. "Her name must be absolutely perfect," said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew. And when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written in ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely and she started school. On the first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way. "Hooray!" said Chrysanthemum. "School!" But when Miss...
So, stop here. I've stopped the book. How is our main character feeling? Chrysanthemum is in love with her name, right? So she's probably feeling happy. As for her character traits, she seems pretty outgoing. She seems pretty kind, right? Let's see what happens next.
Mrs. Chud took roll call. Everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. "It's so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on your name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "You're named after a flower." Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chud that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. "That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet," Victoria explained. "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chud. "Now put your head down. If I had a name like yours, I'd change it," Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. "I wish I could," said Chrysanthemum miserably.
So far we've noticed two character interactions between Chrysanthemum and Victoria. So we knew in the beginning that Chrysanthemum was pretty outgoing. What about Victoria? What are her character traits? I would say that she's pretty mean. So looking at your list of character traits, you see that word mean. How is she behaving? She's behaving kind of rude, right? Let's keep going.
"Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag, and I'm named after a flower." "Oh, shh," said her mother. "Your name is beautiful." "And precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome," said her father. "It's everything you are," said her mother. "Absolutely perfect," said her father. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. "Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum," she wrote. "She even looks like a flower," said Victoria as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. "Let's pick her," said Rita, pointing. "Let's smell her," said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, "A chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things." "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chud. "Now put your head down." "I just cannot believe your name," Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. "Neither can I," thought Chrysanthemum miserably. "Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "They said I even look like a flower. They pretended to pick me and smell me." "Oh, psh," said her mother. "They're just jealous." "And envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced," said her father. "Who would be jealous of a name like yours?" said her mother. another evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked the leaves and petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at each and every flower. Chrysanthemum, 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 the flowers seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musicale. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Jo was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy, chrysanthemum's a daisy, Jo, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. What's so humorous? Asked Mrs. Twinkle. Chrysanthemum, was the answer. Her name is so long, said Jo. It scarcely fits on her name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. She's named after a flower. My name is long, said Mrs. Twinkle. It is, said Jo. My name would scarcely fit on a name tag, said Mrs. Twinkle. It would, said Rita, pointing. And, said Mrs. Twinkle, I'm named after a flower, too. You are, said Victoria. Yes, said Mrs. Twinkle. My name is Delphinium. Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed. She beamed. She bloomed. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Jo, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. Call me Marigold, said Jo. I'm Carnation, said Rita, pointing. My name is Lily of the Valley, said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. Epilogue.
Okay, so now that you have read, we've both gone through this story together, what y'all are going to do is complete your Schoology assignment, make sure you have these notes written, and you're going to put this into practice by yourself. Good luck.